Nathan pulled his car into the half-empty parking lot, the glow of the streetlights casting long shadows over the pavement. The night air was cool, a stark contrast to the heat that simmered beneath his skin. Another late night, another evening spent alone while Samantha worked. He glanced at the clock on the dashboard, noting the hour, almost 10:30 p.m. She'd promised she'd be home soon, but Nathan knew better than to expect her on time. She was always buried in work, always with a reason for staying late. His phone buzzed, the vibration pulling his attention away from the steering wheel. He glanced down at the screen, expecting a message from his friend, but instead, there was an anonymous notification. His heart skipped a beat. He didn't recognize the number. The message had no words, just a link to a video. With a sense of unease creeping up his spine, Nathan clicked on it. He braced himself for something innocuous, something harmless. But as soon as the video loaded, his stomach dropped. The grainy video revealed the unmistakable outline of the office parking lot, the one where Samantha always parked when she worked late. There she was, standing by her car, laughing. Her body was angled toward a man Nathan had seen before, Alex Carter, a coworker with the kind of charm Nathan had always been wary of. But what hit him hardest wasn't the laughter. It wasn't even the way Alex's hand casually touched her arm. It was the kiss. Samantha leaning in, her lips meeting his in a way that could never be mistaken for anything but passion. Nathan's hands tightened around the steering wheel. His breath caught in his throat and his heart pounded, each beat echoing in his ears. He rewound the video, staring at the scene again, praying for some sign of a mistake, some glitch in the footage. But no. The truth was staring him in the face, undeniable and raw. His world tilted, his vision blurred. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the betrayal. A sickening rush of emotions flooded his chest. Shock, confusion, disbelief. But as the initial wave passed, it was replaced with a deep, gut-wrenching pain. His mind reeled back to the times they had shared. The late-night conversations, their whispered promises of forever. All of it now felt like a lie, a carefully crafted illusion. Samantha had always been so loving, so devoted. Or so he thought. The late-night dinners, the soft touches, the way she looked at him like he was the only person who mattered. Had it all been a facade? The memories flashed. Her laughter, her warmth, the way she would brush his hair from his face as if it were a precious moment. It all felt so hollow now. How long had she been lying to him? Had Alex been the only one, or were there others? Nathan's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles turned white. The anger was building now, a slow burn that was threatening to turn into something more dangerous. He had trusted her, ignored the little signs, the unexplained late hours, the distant looks. How could he have been so blind? He punched the steering wheel, the sudden pain a brief release from the anguish gnawing at him. But the pain didn't last. It couldn't, because nothing could erase the betrayal. His thumb hovered over Samantha's name on his contact list. The urge to confront her was overwhelming, to demand answers, to scream, to expose her for what she was. But he knew better. Calling her now would be pointless. She would lie. She would deny, deflect, manipulate. He had seen her do it before. When things were too difficult, too messy, she would twist the truth until it was unrecognizable. He didn't press call. Instead, something darker started to take root inside him, a thought that unsettled him more than anything. This wasn't just about confronting her. No, this was deeper, more than a simple act of revenge. Samantha had built a perfect world for herself, one where she could deceive him, where she could have her cake and eat it too. If she thought she could get away with it. She had grossly underestimated him. Nathan's fingers clenched around his phone as his breath came in shallow, controlled bursts. He wasn't going to let this go. She had taken something from him. His trust, his peace of mind, his future. It wasn't just about hurt. It was about making sure she understood the cost of betraying him. His mind raced as the anger turned colder, sharper, more deliberate. A simple confrontation wouldn't be enough. No, he wanted more than that. Samantha had lied to him for too long. She had treated him like a fool, like a puppet dangling on strings while she played her game. If she thought she could slip away pretending nothing happened, she was wrong. Nathan wasn't going to let this just fade into the past, a moment of weakness swept under the rug. He would make sure it all came crashing down, piece by piece, until there was nothing left of her perfect life. She had built it, yes, but he was going to destroy it. And in the process, he would make sure she would never forget the price of betraying him. Nathan had always believed that love, true love, was something unshakable. His relationship with Samantha had been everything he had ever wanted. They met in college. Her bright eyes and contagious laugh had drawn him in from the first moment. He remembered the late nights spent talking about their dreams, the plans. They made for a future that felt as certain as the sunrise. He believed in her in a way that was almost religious, as though she was the one thing in his life that could never fail him. They had endured the struggles that most young couples did, financial, problems, the weight of uncertainty, but they always came out stronger. Nathan had been the one who stayed when she faltered, the one who supported her through the ups and downs of her career ambitions. When Samantha was unsure of herself, he was the rock, the constant reminder that they were in this together. And, yet, here he was sitting alone in the darkened car, staring at the video that had just destroyed everything. How could something so pure, so full of promise fall apart so quickly? How could he have been so blind to the cracks beneath the surface? Samantha's career had always been important to her, but as she climbed higher in the public relations world, Nathan had begun to notice a shift. She had always been ambitious, but something about the long hours and late-night networking events began to change her. What started as small, harmless work commitments quickly turned into days spent away from home. Nights filled with meetings and gatherings Nathan wasn't invited to. At first, he had been proud of her success. He admired her dedication, her ability to navigate the complicated world of PR with such grace and confidence. He had encouraged her to keep pushing forward, to chase after her dreams, even when it meant sacrificing time together. After all, this was the life they had planned for. It was all for their future. But as the weeks passed, Nathan started to feel like an outsider in his own life. Samantha was no longer the woman who had spent her evenings sharing her hopes and dreams with him. The late nights at the office had turned into something else, a wall between them. She seemed more distant every day, her focus shifting toward a world that didn't include him. Nathan couldn't help but feel smaller, invisible in the shadow of her growing success. But he never said anything. He didn't want to seem unsupportive. He kept quiet, telling himself it was just a phase, a small sacrifice for something greater. It wasn't until Alex Carter came into the picture that Nathan started to feel the nagging sensation that something wasn't quite right. Alex was the kind of guy who effortlessly charmed everyone around him. Tall, confident, with a smile that could light up a room, he had that rare ability to make everyone feel like the most important person in the world. And of course, he worked in the same office as Samantha. Nathan had met him once or twice at company events, and while he had always seemed friendly, there was something about him that didn't sit well with Nathan. He was married, and yet he always seemed to gravitate towards Samantha. It was subtle at first. Casual chats after work, shared laughs in the break room, But Nathan noticed the way Samantha's eyes would light up when Alex spoke to her. He noticed the way she would laugh a little too hard at his jokes. Samantha always brushed it off when Nathan asked about him. "He's just a colleague," she'd say with a smile. "Nothing to worry about." And Nathan, trusting her words over his growing unease, dismissed his own instincts. After all, she was his world. He would never dream of questioning her loyalty. But things began to change. The warm, intimate moments they used to share, long talks on quiet nights, gentle touches that spoke volumes, began to fade. What had once been easy and effortless was now awkward. Samantha's texts became shorter, her responses more distant. The excitement in her voice when she called him had disappeared, replaced by a coolness that Nathan couldn't ignore. He tried to convince himself it was stress, that her demanding career was taking its toll. After all, she was working harder than ever, dealing with clients and events that stretched her thin. It wasn't unusual for her to seem distracted. He told himself it was just a phase. Everything would go back to normal once things settled down. But deep down, Nathan knew something was wrong. The warmth between them had disappeared, and in its place a coldness had taken root. There were nights when he waited for her to come home, only to fall asleep alone on the couch. He told himself he was being paranoid, that she was just busy. But the doubts lingered, gnawing at him. He had become a stranger to her, a placeholder in a life she was slowly leaving behind. It wasn't just his own doubts that troubled him. His friends had started to notice the distance between him and Samantha. They hinted at things, little comments about her closeness to Alex. "You sure everything's all right with you two?" one of them asked during a gathering. Nathan had brushed it off with a laugh. "Yeah, she's just working a lot, nothing to worry about." But the warnings kept coming, subtle at first, then more direct. One evening, after a particularly long night at work, a friend had pulled him aside. "You don't think she's seeing someone else, do you?" they had asked, the concern in their voice evident. Nathan had shaken his head, the words too painful to even consider. "No," he had replied, more to reassure himself than them. She wouldn't do that. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The silence at home was deafening. The empty spaces between them were growing wider with each passing day. Yet love made him blind to the cracks, and the doubts he buried deep inside were drowned by the hope that everything would work itself out. And then, one night, everything shattered. A sudden text from an unknown number broke through his veil of denial. His fingers shook as he opened it, and his stomach dropped when he saw the attached images. Screenshots of flirtatious messages exchanged between Samantha and Alex. Hotel receipts. Pictures of the two of them together in places he had never been. His heart raced, the blood pounding in his ears as he scrolled through the evidence. The messages were casual, almost mocking in their cruelty. Inside jokes, declarations of affection, plans to meet up. The timestamps on the photos were recent, taken just days before. He felt his stomach churn as the reality of it all hit him. Nathan had been blind. She had lied to him for months, and now he saw it all laid bare before him. Every word, every touch, every moment he had shared with her had been nothing more than a lie. Nathan wasn't the only one who knew now. The affair between Samantha and Alex wasn't some well-hidden secret. It was an open one. His coworkers, their friends, had all known. They had all stayed silent, letting him walk around in blissful ignorance while Samantha played her game. And Nathan wasn't just betrayed by her. He was humiliated. The world had known what he refused to see, and they had let him believe that everything was fine. As the reality of it all settled in, the weight of his own naivety hit him harder than any betrayal. He had been the fool, the one everyone had pitied without him even knowing. The hurt was more than just the affair. It was the humiliation, the shame that came with it. Nathan's hands trembled as he stared at the screen, the evidence still fresh in his mind. The anonymous message, the images, the taunts, all of it swirling in his chest like a violent storm. His heart, once full of love for Samantha, now felt like a hollow pit. Betrayal was a poison, and it spread through him faster than he could process. The anger was immediate, raw, but it wasn't the kind of anger that would see him shouting at her, begging for answers. No, that would be too easy for her. She would twist the truth, play the victim, turn the tables. He knew her better than that. She'd made a fool of him for months, and now it was time for her to feel the same humiliation. Nathan wasn't going to confront her directly, not yet. He had to be smart. He had to hit where it would hurt the most. And what better way to destroy her than to take everything she had built, the career, the image, the perfect life she had created for herself, and burn it all to the ground. With a steady breath, Nathan typed out his reply to the anonymous message. His fingers hovered over the keys, each word carefully chosen. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" he asked, his anger veiled by an icy calm. The reply came quickly. "You don't know me, but I know you. I'm done being quiet. Samantha and Alex have been playing you for a fool for months." Nathan's heart skipped a beat. Mia? That name rang a bell. Alex's assistant. He didn't know much about her, but the thought of someone on the inside reaching out to him felt like a strange, small lifeline. Mia continued. "I've seen everything. Emails, meetings, texts. I know all about their affair. I can prove it. You want revenge? I'm with you." Nathan sat back, stunned. The last thing he expected was someone on the inside offering to help him. He could feel the weight of the situation shifting. This wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a corporate disaster waiting to happen. Mia wasted no time. Within hours, she sent him the first of many bombshells. He opened the attachments, his eyes scanning the confidential emails between Samantha and Alex. The casual flirtation was undeniable. "Can't wait to see you tonight," one message read. "Same place as always, 9 p.m. Another email had a picture of a hotel receipt, room 312, checked in at 8:30 p.m., a date Nathan recognized all too well. As he read through each piece of evidence, Nathan's stomach churned. This wasn't just an affair, it was a betrayal so deep it could ruin their careers. There were policies in place at the company forbidding personal relationships between employees, especially with such close proximity in the workplace. These emails weren't just personal, they were professional misconduct, and they could destroy Samantha's carefully crafted image. Nathan's mind raced. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about something bigger. If he exposed them, it could ruin everything they had worked for. The stakes were higher than he had imagined. It was the perfect storm waiting to happen. Samantha and Alex were overseeing the corporate event of the year, an exclusive gala with executives, clients, and employees from all over the city. Nathan had heard about the event for weeks, watched Samantha work tirelessly to ensure its success. She had talked about it constantly, describing it as the culmination of her career, a defining moment in her professional life. And Nathan realized then, this was the moment he had been waiting for. The event would be the perfect stage for his revenge. If he could time it right, if he could expose them in front of everyone, their professional image would shatter in an instant. The people she had spent so much time impressing would see her for what she truly was, an adulterer, a liar, a manipulator. The humiliation would be complete. Nathan worked quickly, gathering every scrap of evidence he could find. He saved the screenshots, the emails, the hotel receipts, even the cruel jokes they'd shared about him behind his back. Each piece of evidence was like a small calculated step toward the inevitable destruction of Samantha's world. He drafted an email, each word carefully chosen, designed to expose them without mercy. He included everything: the dates, the times, the messages, the pictures. He even added a few of their more mocking exchanges, the ones where they had laughed at his trust in Samantha. He felt a cold satisfaction wash over him as he typed the final line. "You've been living a lie. Your world is about to crumble. With one click, it would all be over. Samantha's double life would be exposed." Nathan knew there was no going back after this. The consequences would be irreversible. But Nathan didn't send the email. Not yet. He could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on him. Timing was everything. If he sent it too soon, it might not have the desired impact. If he waited too long, he risked losing his opportunity. He glanced at the calendar on his phone. Just a few more days until the gala. If he sent the email now, the damage would be done, but it wouldn't have the same impact. The event was where everything would come to a head. He would wait. One last step before he destroyed everything she had built. Nathan leaned back in his chair, staring at the draft. His finger hovered over the send button. The moment was almost here. Once he hit send, everything would change. The days leading up to the gala were strange. Samantha was so focused on the event, so consumed by the details that she hardly seemed to notice Nathan anymore. She would smile at him, chat casually about the event, talk about the guests who would be attending, all while completely unaware of the storm that was about to break. Nathan watched her closely, studying every little movement, every glance, every word. He wondered if she ever truly loved him, or if he had just been a convenient placeholder in her life. The thought lingered in his mind, a bitter question with no answer. But it didn't matter now. Once the truth came out, once the world knew what she had done, it wouldn't matter how much she had once meant to him. He could see the glint of excitement in her eyes as she prepared for the gala, but all Nathan felt was the cold certainty of what was coming. The storm was on the horizon, and when it hit, it would destroy everything in its path. The night had arrived, the company's annual gala. The ballroom was filled with the sound of polite chatter and the clinking of glasses. Employees, clients, and executives were scattered around the room, enjoying the lavish setting. Samantha stood at the center, confident and poised, the very picture of success. Beside her, Alex, ever charming, smiled as they mingled with their colleagues. Their professional relationship had always been above reproach, or so it seemed. Nathan watched from the shadows, disguised as a tech assistant. His eyes never left the pair, his heart heavy with anticipation. The moment of truth was near. He could feel it in his bones. Everything he had meticulously planned was about to unfold. As the evening progressed, the energy in the room shifted. People laughed and networked, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Samantha and Alex took the stage, ready to present the company's latest achievements to an eager audience. Nathan's fingers tightened on the cables of his laptop. He had set the stage. Now all that was left was to press a button, and the truth would be exposed. As the company's corporate presentation began, the room's attention shifted to the large screen behind the stage. Samantha and Alex stood side by side, completely unaware of what was happening backstage. Nathan's hand hovered over the laptop. The screen flickered for a brief moment, cutting off the presentation. In its place, an inbox full of emails appeared. Some with the subject line, "Can't wait to see you tonight." Others with hotel bookings and private messages that were never meant to be seen. It wasn't just business, it was personal. Flirty exchanges, inappropriate jokes, even naked pictures all scrolling across the screen for the room to witness. A collective gasp echoed through the crowd. Murmurs spread and whispers filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Nathan's breath quickened as the realization of what was happening hit him. The truth, his truth, was out in the open. Samantha's face drained of color. Her mouth opened in disbelief, but the words wouldn't come. Alex's eyes widened in panic as the screen displayed their private moments, his lies exposed for the world to see. There was no turning back now. The humiliation was complete. Samantha's eyes darted from the screen to Alex, her heart racing. The laughter from the crowd had died, replaced by the sound of uncomfortable shuffling. Everyone in the room now knew the truth. The CEO, standing at the back of the room, exchanged grim glances with senior executives. They knew this scandal would destroy everything they had worked for. Alex attempted to shut down the screen, his hands fumbling with the controls, but it was too late. The damage had been done. Samantha's professional image, her carefully constructed life, was in ruins. The whispers grew louder, more pointed. Some employees exchanged knowing glances. Others hid their smiles, grateful they weren't the ones under the spotlight. Nathan could feel the rush of vindication fill his chest, but there was no time to savor it. He watched as Samantha and Alex were left standing on stage, their faces the color of ash, their careers slipping away by the second. Among the shocked crowd, a woman rose from her seat, Alex's wife, Laura. Her eyes were filled with fire, her face a mixture of disbelief and rage. As the screen continued to flash the damning images, she stormed toward the stage. Her high heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she approached, her hands shaking with fury. Without a word, she slapped Alex across the face. The sound of the slap rang out in the stunned silence of the room, and gasps echoed from every corner. Alex staggered back, his eyes wide, his mouth opening to form some kind of defense, but nothing came out. Laura turned to face the audience, her voice shaking with raw emotion. "You think you can hide this from me, from all of us?" she yelled. "I'm done. You don't deserve her, and you don't deserve me." Security quickly moved in, but the damage was done. Laura was escorted out of the room, her words hanging in the air, leaving a trail of disbelief in her wake. Alex stood there, his face reddened, the weight of the betrayal settling in. Within minutes, the company's HR executives took action. The CEO's voice rang out from the back of the room, cutting through the chaos. "We will be conducting an internal investigation into these allegations. Both Samantha and Alex are hereby suspended from all duties until further notice." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as the gravity of the situation sank in. The once admired power couple of the company were now the subject of pity and derision. Employees exchanged knowing glances, some sympathetic to their former colleagues, others eager to see them fall from grace. The corporate world was unforgiving, and everyone knew this scandal would cost Samantha and Alex far more than just their professional reputations. As the suspension was announced, Samantha's legs seemed to buckle beneath her. She stumbled slightly, clutching the edge of the podium to steady herself. Her face was a mixture of shock and defeat, as if the ground had been ripped out from under her. The dream she had spent years building had crumbled in front of her very eyes. Hours later, Nathan's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He didn't hesitate before answering. "Nathan, please. You have to understand, I never meant for it to go this far." Samantha's voice came through, broken and frantic. Her sobs were muffled, but the desperation in her tone was undeniable. "Nathan, I need you. Please tell me what I can do to fix this. I'll make it right. I'll do anything." He could hear the hysteria in her voice, the cracks forming as she tried to salvage whatever was left of her shattered life. He leaned back in his chair, his voice steady. cutting through her frantic pleas. "I just wanted you to feel what betrayal really looks like," he said, each word punctuated with the weight of his hurt. "You destroyed me, Sam. You didn't think I would ever find out, did you?" Her silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. Nathan knew it was over. There was no fixing this. The damage was irreversible. The following morning, Alex returned home, his shoulders heavy, his every step a reminder of the scandal that had unraveled his life. He opened the door, expecting to see Laura, to find some way to apologize, to make things right. But the apartment was eerily quiet. On the kitchen counter, he found a note. It was short, cold. "I've packed my things. It's over. I've filed for divorce." His knees gave way, and he sank into a chair, the weight of his actions crashing down on him. The affair, the lies, it had all led him here to the end of everything he had once taken for granted. News of the scandal spread like wildfire throughout the industry. Alex was blacklisted from top firms, his name was tainted, and his career, once filled with potential, was now a distant memory. As he looked around at the emptiness of his apartment, he realized that the betrayal had cost him everything. The woman he had betrayed, the career he had built, gone, all because of his own recklessness. His downfall was complete, and as the reality of his situation set in, Alex could only wonder how he had let it all slip away. The whispers didn't stay confined to the sterile walls of the office. As soon as the truth had been exposed, it rippled outward, gaining momentum with every passing hour. News of Samantha and Alex's affair infiltrated the industry like wildfire, reaching clients, former colleagues, and even those who had never worked with them but knew their names. In every meeting, the tension was palpable. Executives avoided eye contact. Employees exchanged knowing glances. The whispers grew louder as the affair became the industry's dirty little secret. Samantha's once untouchable status had been shattered in a matter of hours, and no one wanted to be associated with a scandal of this magnitude. Social media erupted in fury. Tweets, posts, and hashtags flooded every platform, condemning Samantha and Alex. Photographs of the scandalous emails, the incriminating images, they all found their way online. Every time Samantha left her apartment, the weight of judgment pressed down on her. People didn't just look at her, they stared. The glare of society's judgment felt like an unbearable spotlight. It was no longer just the office that had turned on her. The world had. The interviews started with promise, but it didn't take long for the atmosphere to change. A few polite smiles, handshakes, and forced pleasantries before the awkward silences began. "We'll be in touch," they'd say, before sending her out the door with a smile that never reached their eyes. Rejection emails piled up in her inbox, each one more crushing than the last. Every word was a reminder that she was no longer the promising, talented professional she once had been. Her reputation had been tainted, and no amount of polish or charm could undo the damage. The doors of the corporate world were closing one by one, leaving her standing on the outside looking in. She would spend the night staring at her phone, fingers hovering over the screen, sending out one more application, hoping against hope. But deep down, Samantha knew. Her future was slipping away and there was no way to get it back. Nights were the hardest. Alone in her apartment, surrounded by the silence of her mistakes, Samantha found herself reaching out to Nathan again and again. The texts came in rapid succession, each one more desperate than the last. "I'm sorry. Please, let's talk. I know I messed up. I can't undo it, but I need you." There was no response. Not once, not ever. The silence was more suffocating than any angry outburst, more painful than any confrontation. She had expected some form of forgiveness, even if it was just to hear his voice again. But the void remained. Regret settled over her like a weight she couldn't shake. She had lost Nathan, the one person who had truly loved her. And now she had lost everything else: her career, her reputation, her sense of self. She had become a cautionary tale, a story whispered about in hushed tones. In trying to hold on to everything, she had lost it all. Nathan had moved on. He had taken the heartbreak, the betrayal, and channeled it into something more productive: his own growth. His career was flourishing in ways he hadn't anticipated, and for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. The pain from the affair had faded, replaced with the quiet confidence of someone who had emerged stronger from the ashes of a broken relationship. He found satisfaction in his work, something that had been missing when his heart had been tied up in Samantha's lies. No longer haunted by the ghost of betrayal, he could focus on the future. His future. His new projects were exciting, his relationships healthy, and the weight of what had happened seemed lighter every day. Samantha's name no longer held any power over him. She had been a lesson, a harsh but necessary one. He had learned what betrayal could do to a person, and he had learned how to walk away. He'd never forget the hurt, but it no longer controlled him. It had been a full year since everything had fallen apart. Nathan was sitting in a dimly lit coffee shop, casually sipping his drink, when he spotted her. She was sitting alone, her eyes fixed on her phone, her shoulders slumped in exhaustion. He could see the weight of her choices, the toll they had taken on her. Her once vibrant energy had been replaced with a hollow, empty stare. She looked different, not just physically but emotionally. Tired, broken. The woman who had once seemed so confident and self-assured now seemed lost, as if she had no idea who she was anymore. For a long moment, Nathan stayed where he was, watching her from across the room. The urge to approach her flickered briefly, but he quickly dismissed it. There was nothing left to say, no words that could undo the past. Instead, he stood up, finished his coffee, and walked out of the cafe without a second glance. She was still sitting there, a woman consumed by the wreckage of her own making. Nathan had moved on, and he would never look back. As he stepped into the daylight, he felt the weight of his own redemption. He had walked through the fire of betrayal and emerged stronger, wiser, and free. Samantha sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by empty coffee cups and unopened bills. The weight of the past few months crushed her chest, making each breath feel like an effort. She had been so focused on building her career, maintaining her image, that she hadn't stopped to think about the cost of the lies she'd told. Each one had seemed harmless at first, but they had piled up, layered upon layer, until they had consumed everything. Now, as the repercussions of her affair with Alex unraveled her life, she could see the toll those lies had taken. Trust was a fragile thing, and once it was broken, there was no putting it back together. The betrayal had destroyed everything: her reputation, her career, and the people who had once believed in her. She was left with nothing but the wreckage of her own choices. Her phone buzzed, but she didn't reach for it. There were no more apologies she could make, no more chances to ask for forgiveness. The silence was her only companion, and the walls of her apartment seemed to close in, offering no escape from the reality she had created. She had paid the price for her deception, and now she was forced to live with the consequences. Nathan sat at his desk, staring out the window of his small office. His fingers drummed idly on the edge of the desk, his mind far from the task at hand. He had never wanted revenge. He had never plotted her downfall or wished for her suffering. All he had ever wanted was the truth. Samantha's actions had shattered him, But in the end, she had only been accountable to herself. Her affair with Alex had been exposed and it had torn her world apart, but it wasn't Nathan who had orchestrated it. He had simply given her the opportunity to see the truth of what she had done, what they had both done, and let it speak for itself. The betrayal had always been about more than just the affair. It was about deception, dishonesty, and the trust that had been broken. The truth had come out, and in doing so, it had brought its own form of justice. She hadn't been punished by Nathan's hand, she had punished herself, and the consequences of her own actions had been laid bare for the world to see. Nathan leaned back in his chair, a small sigh escaping his lips. He had never wanted this for her, but the truth had its way of unraveling everything. In the end, justice wasn't about retribution, it was about the consequences of betrayal catching up with you. Samantha was living proof of that. Trust had been something Nathan had given so freely. It had come easily to him, a natural part of his nature. He had trusted Samantha with his heart, his dreams, his future. He had believed that what they shared was real, that the bond they had built was unbreakable. But he had been wrong. Now, the idea of trust felt like a distant memory. It had been shattered, a delicate thing destroyed in an instant by the weight of Samantha's lies. The pain of that betrayal still lingered in the back of his mind, but with each passing day, he had learned to guard himself more carefully. Blind faith, he realized now, could be dangerous. The trust he had given so freely had been used against him, and that lesson would stick with him for the rest of his life. He would never be the same. Betrayal had a way of changing you, making you more cautious, more guarded, more aware of the fragility of what you gave to others. Nathan had stopped, looking back. He had stopped waiting for closure from Samantha, stopped wishing for some form of apology or redemption from her. The woman who had once been the love of his life had long since disappeared, replaced by someone who had caused him irreparable pain. Her suffering was her own burden to bear, and Nathan would no longer carry the weight of her mistakes. He had moved on, stepped into a new chapter of his life, one free from the shackles of the past. His career was thriving, his relationships were healthy, and for the first time in a long time he felt unburdened. The pain of the past remained, but it was no longer the driving force in his life. Nathan had learned the hard way that trust was something to be given carefully. It was a gift, not a right, and it could be taken away just as easily as it was given. But the lesson he had learned from his betrayal had made him stronger. He knew now that the pain of the past would never completely disappear, but it would no longer define him. He had moved forward with clarity, and in that clarity, he found peace.